One moment changed everything for everyone involved.
The presence of 3 silver stars was the sole distinction between the woman in restraints and the men mistreating her. These insignia, concealed within the glove compartment, symbolized the immense power of the United States Army. On a sodden evening in Georgia, 2 overzealous law enforcement officers, blinded by their own prejudices and a lust for authority, committed an error of monumental proportions. Mistaking a black woman in an opulent vehicle for a criminal, they failed to recognize they were manhandling Lieutenant General Zaravos, the very individual responsible for the logistical operations across the entire eastern seaboard. Their intention was an apprehension. Their consequence would be the professional ruin of their careers. The impending telephone conversation she was about to initiate would summon not merely legal counsel, but the formidable presence of the Pentagon. The downpour lashed against the windshield of the Obsidian Range Rover, transforming the roadside eatery's neon glow into elongated, weeping streaks of color. Inside the vehicle, an almost palpable silence prevailed, punctuated only by the rhythmic swish and hiss of the windshield wipers. Lieutenant General Zaravos released a slow, measured exhalation, a breath she typically reserved for moments of intense geopolitical crisis within the confines of the Situation Room. Tonight, however, her primary adversary was fatigue, though her posture, remarkably erect even in the plush leather driver's seat, betrayed a lifetime of unwavering discipline. She was attired in civilian clothing, a modest cream-colored cashmere sweater paired with dark trousers. To the casual observer, she might have appeared as a successful real estate agent or perhaps a university provost. There was no military uniform, no array of service ribbons, and conspicuously no visible insignia to offer her protection from the preconceived notions of the outside world. Zara consulted the illuminated dashboard clock. Her destination was still Fort Benning. She was returning from a private memorial service for a fallen comrade held in Atlanta. Her keen, perceptive eyes surveyed the rearview mirror. Headlights. They had been a persistent presence for miles, neither overtaking nor falling behind, but maintaining a disquieting position within her blind spot. With an aggressive, almost predatory intent, she eased her foot from the accelerator, deliberately reducing her speed below the posted limit, intending to allow them to pass. The vehicle trailing her mirrored her deceleration. Zara's grip on the steering wheel tightened. She understood the established protocols. She was acutely aware of the relevant statistics, yet this knowledge did little to quell the unsettling cascade of adrenaline that began at the nape of her neck. Then the lights appeared. A pulsating tableau of blue and red erupted in the rearview mirror, fracturing the surrounding darkness. The siren's announcement was not a wail, but a brief, authoritative series of whoops, an undeniable command for compliance. "All right," Zara murmured to the unoccupied interior of the vehicle. Just a standard stop. License, registration, proof of insurance. She engaged her turn signal and guided the substantial SUV onto the gravel verge alongside Route 9. Towering Georgia pines, their forms rendered menacing by the gloom, flanked the roadway like jagged teeth. She shifted the transmission into park, activated the interior dome light, a critical measure for enhancing visibility and ensuring safety, and placed both hands, fingers splayed, atop the steering wheel. In her side mirror, she observed the patrol car door opening. A figure emerged. He was young, Caucasian, with a closely cropped hairstyle that seemed starkly ill-suited to the shape of his skull. He walked with an ostentatious swagger, a clear indication of both boredom and an unwarranted sense of authority. Officer Dax Riley. He was several years into his tenure with the force, his personnel file already replete with complaints of excessive force, complaints that had been conveniently obscured by his union representative. Riley approached the passenger side first, directing a high-intensity tactical flashlight beam directly into the cabin. The powerful light cut through the tinted glass, momentarily blinding Zara. She remained unmoved, her gaze fixed straight ahead. He then circled to the rear of the vehicle, tapping a taillight. Whether a superstitious gesture or an attempt to gather forensic evidence remained unclear. He arrived at the driver's window. He did not knock. He simply stood there, the beam of his flashlight relentlessly trained on her face. Zara lowered the window, allowing the scent of rain and damp asphalt to permeate the interior. "Good evening, officer," she stated. Her voice was remarkably calm, imbued with the same measured tone she employed when briefing presidents or reassuring panicked soldiers under artillery fire. "How may I assist you?" Riley offered no immediate reply. He was chewing on something, possibly gum or tobacco. He leaned down, resting his forearms on the doorframe, encroaching upon her personal space. "Nice vehicle," Riley remarked. The statement was far from a compliment. It was an accusation. "Thank you," Zara responded evenly. "Whose is it?" "It is mine, officer." A smirk, a fleeting, unpleasant contortion of his lips crossed Riley's face. "Yours? That's $100,000 automobile. Are you from around here, ma'am?" "I am stationed at Fort Benning," she replied, keeping her responses concise. "I am returning to base." "Base, huh?" Riley chuckled derisively. "Do you work in the commissary? Perhaps the laundry service? My cousin works in the mess hall over there." Zara registered the insult, its weight and unpleasantness palpable, but she allowed it to slide off her as if from an impervious shield. "I am an officer in the United States Army. Now may I inquire as to the reason for this traffic stop?" Riley's expression hardened. He clearly did not appreciate her tone, nor her apparent lack of fear. He straightened, his hand drifting casually towards his belt, resting near his holstered weapon. "We've received reports of a stolen vehicle matching this description circulating within the county." Riley was fabricating. It was a time-worn ruse. There was no report. There was simply a black woman occupying an expensive automobile on an isolated roadway. License and registration. "Now it's in the glove compartment," Zara announced, narrating her intended actions. "I am going to reach over and retrieve it." "Don't you move," Riley barked, his hand snapping towards his firearm. "Keep your hands where I can see them." "You just requested my identification," Zara stated, her voice dropping an octave, assuming a commanding tone. "I am unable to provide it without moving my hands, officer." Riley stared at her, his eyes exhibiting a glassy sheen, a mixture of adrenaline and bewilderment. He was unaccustomed to logic. He was accustomed to fear. He tapped his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4 Alpha. I have a non-compliant subject on Route 9 requesting backup." Zara closed her eyes for a fleeting instant. Non-compliant. The pivotal phrase that served as justification for whatever was to follow. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof like an impatient, insistent rhythm. Within moments, a second patrol car screeched to a halt behind Riley's vehicle. The headlights from this second car augmented the blinding glare, transforming the slick roadway into an impromptu stage. Sergeant Lyle Beckett emerged from the cruiser. He was an older man, stoutly built, with a mustache that concealed a mouth perpetually downturned in a grimace of dissatisfaction. Beckett was a veteran officer of the Oak Creek Police Department. He was known as the Fixer, the individual responsible for instructing rookies like Riley on the proper methods for documenting incidents in a manner that effectively concealed contusions and fractures. Beckett ambled towards the window, the rain darkening the fabric of his uniform shirt. Riley provided a rapid, hushed briefing, gesturing towards Zara as if she were a loaded weapon. "She claims to be military," Riley whispered, audibly enough for Zara to overhear. "Acting arrogant, refused to present identification. I suspect she's under the influence or in possession of contraband." Beckett nodded, his gaze narrowing as he assessed Zara. He perceived exactly what Riley saw. A target. He leaned in towards the window. "Ma'am," Beckett drawled, "please exit the vehicle." "Officer," Zara interjected, her patience rapidly diminishing. "I've identified myself as an officer of the United States Army. I request that you verify my license plate. It is registered in the Department of Defense database. If you run the tag, you will confirm this." "I did not request a discourse," Beckett bellowed, flecks of spittle erupting from his lips. "I instructed you to exit the vehicle immediately, or we will escort you out." Zara meticulously weighed her available options. If she remained seated, they would undoubtedly shatter the window. They would forcibly extract her through the resultant shards. If she exited voluntarily, she would be rendered vulnerable. However, By doing so, she would maintain a semblance of dignity. "I am exiting the vehicle," she announced with clear enunciation. She unfastened her seatbelt. She opened the door. As her shoe made contact with the damp gravel, Riley seized her left arm. He did not guide her. He yanked her forcefully. Zara stumbled, her dress shoes sliding on the muddy surface. "Easy!" she snapped, instinctively attempting to withdraw her arm. "She's resisting!" Riley shrieked. It was a performance clearly intended for the dashboard camera. "Cease resisting!" "I am not resisting," Zara stated firmly, planting her feet. "I am a lieutenant general in the United States Army. You are making a profound error in judgment." Riley emitted a laugh, a high-pitched, nervous sound. "Yeah, and I'm the Queen of England. Turn around, hands on the hood." They shoved her forward with brutal force. The frigid metal of the Range Rover's hood pressed against her cheek. Her arms were wrenched behind her back with excessive force, causing immediate and sharp pain in her rotator cuffs. "You are assaulting a superior officer," Zara hissed through clenched teeth. "You ain't no officer," Beckett grunted, exerting his full body weight on her lower back to maintain her pinned position. "You're a suspect in a grand theft auto investigation." Riley retrieved the handcuffs from his belt. The metallic ratcheting sound as the teeth engaged around her wrists was the most prominent noise of the night. Click, click, click. They were tightened to the point of biting into her bone. Zara Voss, a woman who commanded thousands of troops, who had overseen the complex logistics of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and who possessed a doctorate in strategic studies, found herself manacled in the rainwater mingling with road grit on her face. "Empty your pockets," Beckett commanded Riley. Riley plunged his hand into her pocket, extracting her phone, a sleek, government-issued smartphone protected by high-level encryption. "Look at this," Riley said, turning the device over. "Password protected, probably dealing. That is government property," Zara stated, her voice chillingly calm. "Now, if you attempt to access that device, you will be in violation of federal espionage laws." Riley glanced at the phone, then back at Zara. A flicker of doubt crossed his face, but his ego quickly extinguished it. He dropped the phone. It was not an accidental drop. He opened his hand and allowed it to fall face down onto the jagged gravel. Then, with a casual cruelty, he stepped on it, grinding his heel into the screen. The sickening crunch of shattering glass echoed. "Oops," Riley sneered. "Slippery hands." Zara watched her device disintegrate. That phone was her lifeline, her direct conduit to Colonel Elias Thorne, her chief of staff. It contained secure codes and critical contact information. However, Riley and Beckett had made a critical miscalculation in their assessment of her technological capabilities. They presumed the phone was her sole means of communication. They were unaware of the Range Rover's integrated telematics system, nor had they noticed the unassuming Black Garmin tactical watch on her left wrist, which was diligently recording audio and monitoring her vital signs. "Get her in the back," Beckett instructed, wiping rain from his eyes. "We'll sort this out at the station. Let the impound crew dismantle this vehicle." They forcibly escorted her away from her vehicle. As they shoved her into the cramped, plastic-scented rear compartment of the patrol car, Zara caught sight of a house across the road. A curtain twitched. Someone was observing. Mrs. Beatrice Caldwell. Zara did not know the name at that moment, but the elderly white woman watching from her porch across the street had witnessed the entire encounter, and Mrs. Caldwell possessed her own iPad, actively recording the unfolding scene through her living room window. The rear compartment of a police cruiser is engineered for dehumanization. Its surfaces are hard plastic, devoid of any comfort, permeated with the lingering odors of old sweat, vomit, and industrial cleaning agents. Zara sat in an awkward position, her hands numb behind her back. The handcuffs were excessively tight, constricting circulation to her thumbs. In the front seats, Riley and Beckett were engaged in conversation, their tension seemingly broken, replaced by the exhilaration of a successful apprehension. "Did you hear her?" Riley scoffed, glancing in the rearview mirror. "I'm a general, man. These individuals will fabricate anything. Last week I had one claim he was the mayor's nephew." Beckett chuckled, initiating the engine's ignition. "Turned out he was just a line cook at Denny's." Zara gazed intently at the back of Riley's head, meticulously memorizing the contours of his ears and the pattern of hair growth on his neck. She was compiling a mental dossier. "Officer," Zara stated, "before you depart, you need to inspect the glove compartment of my vehicle." "We'll examine it during the inventory for towing," Beckett replied dismissively. "If you tow that vehicle," Zara continued, "you will inadvertently trigger a remote security lockdown that will notify the nearest military police detachment. That vehicle contains classified documents secured within a lockbox in the trunk." The vehicle fell into an abrupt silence. Beckett slammed on the brakes. The cruiser had not yet moved, but his foot remained poised above the pedal. He turned to look at Riley. "Classified documents?" "She's bluffing, Lyle," Riley asserted, though a tremor of uncertainty entered his voice. "Look at her. She's wearing a sweater. Generals wear uniforms." "Not when they are off duty," Zara corrected. "My common access card, my military identification, is located in the center console, beneath the sunglasses. If you are discerning, you will retrieve it." Beckett hesitated. The unwavering certainty in her voice was beginning to penetrate his preconceived notions. He switched off the engine. "Go and look," Beckett commanded Riley. "Lyle, come on." "Go look, Dax," Beckett snapped. "If she is indeed military, I need to confirm it before we book her, so we can charge her with impersonating an officer as well. That will seal the case." Riley groaned, opened the door, and jogged back through the persistent rain toward the Range Rover. Zara observed him through the rain-streaked glass. She watched as he opened the driver's side door. He began to search the interior. A moment later, Riley froze, half in and half out of the Range Rover. He extracted something and held it up to the dim interior light. It was a standard Department of Defense common access card, but it lacked the green stripe of a contractor or the white stripe of a regular soldier. It bore the distinct markings of a high-ranking commissioned officer. Adjacent to it, he discovered a small leather wallet. He opened it. A gold badge gleamed within, accompanied by a laminated card prominently displaying 3 stars. Riley stared intently at the identification. He then looked back towards the cruiser and then down at the ID again. He sprinted back to the cruiser, his face pale. He slid into the front seat, water dripping from his nose. He remained silent, merely handing the identification to Beckett. Beckett accepted it. He squinted at the photograph. He then looked back at Zara, confined within the plexiglass partition. He examined the card once more. Lieutenant General Zara A. Voss, United States Army. "Holy hell," Beckett stammered. "Is it fake?" Riley asked, a desperate hope coloring his voice. "It must be fake. You can purchase those online, correct?" Beckett rubbed his face. "It has the holographic chip, Dax. It feels genuine." "So what?" Riley countered, his aggression resurfacing as a defensive mechanism. "So she's in the army. That doesn't preclude her from stealing the car. It doesn't mean she wasn't resisting." Beckett swiveled in his seat, addressing Zara through the transparent barrier. "Are you truly a general?" "I am," Zara confirmed. "And you have, in effect, abducted a senior military official. You have destroyed government property, and you have physically assaulted me. Every second I remain in these restraints adds a year to the federal prison sentence you're facing." Beckett turned his attention back to Riley. "We can't undo the arrest, Dax. We've already reported it. Dispatch is aware we have a suspect in custody, so we need to stick to the story," Riley stated, his eyes wide with desperation. "She was swerving, erratically. She was belligerent. We discovered the ID after she kicked me. Yes, she kicked me. That constitutes assault on an officer. That overrides any military affiliation." Zara listened, a sense of disbelief washing over her. They were doubling down, attempting to fabricate a new narrative. Instead of offering an apology and releasing her, they were actively conspiring to incriminate her in order to protect themselves. "You are exacerbating the situation," Zara warned. "Shut up," Riley yelled, striking the dashboard with his hand. "You are not to speak. You are a suspect." Beckett started the car's engine. "We'll take her to the station. We'll book her quickly. We'll contact the chief. Chief Pike will know how to handle this. We'll bury this in paperwork before the army becomes aware of it." Zara leaned back against the unyielding plastic seat, closing her eyes. They believed that by destroying her phone, they had severed her communication lines. They presumed they could evade the consequences of their actions. She subtly shifted her wrist. The Garmin watch remained active. She pressed the side button 3 times in rapid succession. It was a distress macro she had programmed for scenarios involving kidnapping during overseas deployments. It did not connect to 911. Instead, it transmitted a GPS ping and a code red alert to a server within the Pentagon's security division. The signal ascended to a satellite, bounced down to a secure operations center in Virginia, and flashed onto a monitor being observed by a weary sergeant. The sergeant jolted upright, spilling his coffee. "Sir, I have a distress beacon from General Voss. It's a domestic incident originating in Georgia." Back in the rain-soaked darkness, the patrol car, with Zara inside, pulled away from the scene, heading towards a holding cell. However, the clock had begun to tick. The countdown to their downfall had commenced. The fluorescent lights of the Oak Creek Police Department emitted a headache-inducing buzz. The station carried the scent of stale coffee and floor wax, a smell that typically signified security for the citizens of the county. Tonight, however, it was a potent reek of corruption. Officer Dax Riley forcefully propelled Zara through the heavy security door, parading her past the dispatch desk as if she were a captured prize. She stumbled slightly, her wrist throbbing in protest as the handcuffs tightened further, but she swiftly regained her balance. She held her head erect, her eyes meticulously scanning every detail of the room. The tactical map adorning the wall, the duty roster, the openly accessible evidence locker. "Booking," Riley announced loudly to the assembled personnel. "Resisting arrest, assault on an officer, potential stolen vehicle." The desk sergeant, a woman named Linda with weary eyes, looked up from her computer. She observed the well-dressed black woman in handcuffs, noted the grim set of Beckett's jaw, and frowned. "Assault?" Linda inquired, glancing from Zara's slender frame to Riley's imposing build. "Seriously, Dax? She kicked me," Riley lied with practiced ease. "Right in the shin. It hurt like hell." "Get the chief," Beckett grunted, unlocking Zara's handcuffs only to immediately press her hand down onto the fingerprint scanner. "We need to expedite this process. She's claiming to be some kind of high-ranking military official." Zara gently rubbed her wrists. Deep crimson welts encircled the dark skin. She offered no complaint. She did not request ice. She simply turned to face the camera for her mugshot, her expression a mask of terrifying neutrality. The door to the back office swung open, revealing Chief Desmond Pike. He was a man who wore his authority like an ill-fitting, abrasive suit. He had held the position of chief for many years, managing the department as if it were his personal domain. "What's all the commotion?" Pike demanded, holding a half-eaten sandwich. "The suspect was uncooperative, Chief," Beckett stated, handing over Zara's military identification. "She asserts she's a lieutenant general. We discovered this in the vehicle after she assaulted Riley." Pike took the identification. He examined it, then looked at Zara. He did not see a general. He saw a significant problem, a potential lawsuit unless it was thoroughly buried beneath a mountain of criminal charges. "General Voss," Pike said, his voice laced with feigned politeness, "you are a considerable distance from your base." "I am stationed at Fort Benning," Zara replied, her voice cutting through the ambient noise of the room. "I was returning from official duties. Your officers engaged in profiling unlawfully detained me, destroyed my government-issued communication device, and physically assaulted me." Pike emitted a laugh, a dry, hollow sound. "That's a rather convenient narrative, but my officers report that you were driving erratically. They state you were combative, and in this county, their word is considered paramount." He leaned in closer, his breath carrying the distinct odor of onions. "Here's how this situation will be resolved. You will plead guilty to a misdemeanor offense, disorderly conduct. We will drop the assault charge, you will pay a fine, and you will be permitted to leave. No complications, no media attention." It was an overt shakedown, a transparent attempt to extract an admission of guilt to shield them from future legal repercussions. Zara regarded him intently. "I will not plead guilty to any charge. I am innocent, and I am demanding my phone call." Pike sighed, tossing her identification onto the desk. "Very well, Provide her with the telephone. One call. Make it a significant one. Riley shoved a greasy landline receiver in her direction. Don't call your boyfriend. He can't assist you. Zara picked up the receiver. She did not contact a lawyer. She did not reach out to a bail bondsman. She retrieved a familiar sequence of digits from her mind, a secure encrypted channel that sidestepped the standard communications hub at Fort Benning. The line connected with a single ring. Command post, Colonel Elias Thorne speaking. A sharp voice responded. Code red, Zara stated with absolute clarity. Designation, Voss Alpha 1. Current position, Oak Creek Police Department. An immediate extraction is imperative. The connection fell silent for a breath. General, Thorne's professional tone evaporated, replaced by an urgent intensity. Are you sustained any harm, ma'am? Affirmative. Subjected to unlawful detainment. Local constabulary is hostile. My communication devices have been rendered inoperable. I am presently undergoing processing. Understood, Thorne confirmed. The distinct sound of a chair sliding on the floor reverberated through the receiver. Remain in your current location, General. We are activating the quick reaction force. Estimated time of arrival is imminent. Do not, and I repeat, do not engage further. We are en route. Zara terminated the call. Riley offered a condescending smirk. Code red? Are you performing an emotion picture? Who precisely was that? Your purveyor of late-night sustenance? Zara turned to confront the trio of men. For the initial occasion throughout the entire evening, she allowed herself a subtle, chilling smile. That, she articulated softly, was the United States Army. Pike rolled his eyes dismissively. Confine her to holding cell number 2. Allow her to compose herself. As Riley physically guided her toward the detention area, Zara offered no resistance. She proceeded with her head held high, meticulously tracking the passage of seconds. Colonel Elias Thorne's response had been far-reaching. He had not merely contacted legal counsel, his actions had reverberated across the entire infrastructure. The instant the line had gone dead, the operations center at Fort Benning erupted into a flurry of activity. Thorne, a decorated officer with extensive experience in the Middle East, whose career owed a significant debt to General Voss's guidance, forcefully struck the alert button on his console. Attention, everyone! Thorne's voice boomed, commanding the attention of the assembled, astonished analysts. The General has been apprehended. This is not a simulation. I require the immediate deployment of the Quick Reaction Force. Notify the Judge Advocate General's Corps. Rouse Colonel Bryce Kane. His current state of repose is irrelevant. Ensure he is transported here. Within moments, the entire installation was abuzz. Lieutenant Colonel Rhea Langford, the commanding officer of the Military Police Battalion, was already fully attired before the blare of the emergency siren had completed its initial cycle. Board the vehicles, she commanded her contingent, full equipment. We are responding to a high-value target hostage situation. Hostage, ma'am? A junior sergeant inquired, adjusting his rifle. Who has taken her? Hostile elements? Langford's expression was severe. Something far worse. Local law enforcement officers with an inflated sense of authority. Back within the confines of the Oak Creek Police Department, the atmosphere was one of self-congratulation. Riley was vividly recounting the apprehension to Linda, significantly embellishing the narrative with each successive detail. Beckett was meticulously completing the arrest documentation, marking checkboxes that would irrevocably alter a civilian's life: resisting arrest, assault, reckless driving. Chief Pike, ensconced in his office with his feet elevated on his desk, was engrossed in a football match on a compact television. He felt a sense of profound satisfaction. He had successfully subdued the impertinent woman. She would undoubtedly opt for a plea agreement by morning. Then the telephone rang. Linda answered. Oak Creek Police. She paused, a frown creasing her brow. Pardon? The governor's executive office. She discreetly covered the mouthpiece. Chief, it's the governor's aide. Pike's feet immediately descended from the desk. What is it? Before he could reach for the receiver, another line illuminated, then a third. Shortly thereafter, the fax machine in the corner commenced a cacophony of screeching, expelling paper, at an alarming rate. "Chief," Beckett interjected, his gaze fixed on the external window, "you might wish to observe this development." Pike gravitated towards the front window. The downpour had ceased, leaving the asphalt surfaces slick and darkly reflective. Initially, a low, resonant hum permeated the air, reminiscent of distant thunder, yet the sky was clear. The hum intensified, causing the window panes to vibrate perceptibly. Then, illumination appeared. Not the characteristic flashing azure of police vehicles. These were intense, stark white tactical spotlights. A formation of 4 Humvees, adorned in woodland camouflage, thundered down Main Street. Their movement was swift, disregarding traffic control devices, maintaining a tight, aggressive, tactical posture. Following in their wake were 2 Obsidian SUVs bearing official government insignia, and overhead, slicing through the night air with relentless authority, a UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter. It hovered at a low altitude above the station, its powerful downdraft whipping debris and dust from the parking lot, causing the entire structure to tremble at its foundations. "Good heavens," Riley whispered, his countenance draining of all color. The convoy executed a jarring deceleration, coming to a complete halt directly before the station, effectively obstructing all egress. Doors swung open with abrupt force. Soldiers disembarked with practiced efficiency. These were not ordinary infantrymen. These were military police personnel, equipped with tactical body armor, protective helmets, and M4 carbines held at a low, ready position. Their movements possessed a terrifyingly fluid precision, rendering Riley's earlier bravado appear akin to a toddler's petulant outburst. Leading the contingent was Colonel Thorne, flanked by 2 individuals in tailored suits who exuded an aura of unyielding resolve. Military legal counsel. Thorne eschewed conventional protocol. He kicked the main entrance door inward with such force that the safety glass sustained a visible fracture. An absolute, deathly silence descended upon the police station's lobby. Linda instinctively recoiled behind her desk. Riley's hand instinctively moved to the grip of his sidearm. "Don't even contemplate such an action, young man," Colonel Thorne commanded, his voice echoing authoritatively throughout the space. "Unless you are intent on initiating a conflict, you will undoubtedly lose within mere seconds." Rifles were instantaneously trained upon the 3 local officers. The crimson beams of laser sights danced across their chests. Chief Pike emerged at a run from his office, his visage contorted with indignant rage. "What in the name of all that is holy is this? You cannot simply breach a police station. This falls under my operational jurisdiction." Thorne advanced, his imposing stature eclipsing the chief. He elevated a single sheet of paper, one of the faxes that had recently arrived. "Your jurisdiction ceased the precise moment you unlawfully detained a general officer of the United States," Thorne declared, his voice strained with suppressed fury. "I am Colonel Elias Thorne. My objective is the retrieval of Lieutenant General Zara Voss, and should she bear even the slightest abrasion, I will personally dismantle this establishment, brick by painstaking brick." "She is a suspect," Pike stammered, though beads of perspiration were clearly visible on his forehead. "She initiated an assault upon an officer." "Where is she?" Thorne demanded, his voice escalating. "Cell block 2, Beckett squeaked, gesturing down the corridor. "Langford, retrieve her," Thorne commanded. "Establish a secure perimeter. No one departs this location. No one is to access any communication devices. This is now officially classified as a federal crime scene." Lieutenant Colonel Langford, accompanied by 2 military police officers, sprinted down the corridor. They located Zara, seated upon the narrow bench within the holding cell. She observed their arrival with a raised gaze. "Your arrival was somewhat delayed," Zara commented dryly. "The traffic conditions were exceptionally challenging, ma'am," Langford replied, a smile breaking through her otherwise stern demeanor. "Allow us to escort you from this facility." Langford activated the electronic lock and swung the cell door open. Zara emerged. She no longer exhibited the posture of a victim. Her bearing was precisely that of her true station, the individual in command. She re-entered the lobby. The silence was profound. Riley was visibly trembling. Beckett stared intently at the floor. Pike appeared to be experiencing a severe medical episode. Zara halted directly before Officer Riley. She focused on his name tag, then on his visibly terrified countenance. "Officer Riley," she stated calmly, "you deliberately stepped on my personal communication device. You intentionally destroyed government property containing classified cryptographic keys. Are you cognizant of the legal ramifications for such an infraction under the Espionage Act?" Riley attempted to vocalize a response, but no sound emanated from his throat. "The penalty," Zara whispered, "is 20 years. Minimum." She then turned her attention towards Thorne. "Colonel, I require these 3 individuals to be taken into custody. All dashcam recordings must be secured immediately to prevent any potential deletion, and I demand immediate contact with the Federal Bureau of Investigation." "Already facilitated, General," Thorne assured her. "The Bureau is presently en route. We are initiating the process." Riley cast a desperate glance at Pike. "Chief, do something." Pike surveyed the assembled soldiers, the menacing rifles, and the hovering Black Hawk helicopter outside. "Silence, Dax," Pike implored, his voice barely audible. "You are entirely on your own." The trap had been sprung, yet the true repercussions had yet to commence. The dawn broke over Oak Creek, not with the anticipated promise of a new day, but with the chilling, somber luminescence of accountability. The rain had finally subsided, leaving the asphalt slick and glossy, reflecting the pulsing beacons of a federal intervention. The police station, typically a bastion of unquestioned local authority, had been effectively absorbed by the United States government. The parking lot, habitually occupied by patrol cruisers and the chief's ostentatious truck, was now a vast expanse of matte black SUVs with tinted windows, woodland camouflage military Humvees, and a contingent of news vans, their occupants having detected the scent of a significant scandal with the acuity of sharks sensing blood in the water. Within the station's confines, the prevailing dynamic had undergone a violent metamorphosis. The air conditioning system hummed with a frantic energy, struggling to cope with the overwhelming influx of personnel. Federal agents, attired in impeccably tailored suits, moved with a predatory efficiency, confiscating file cabinets, meticulously imaging hard drives, and clearly demarcating evidence. The local officers, those not directly involved in the apprehension, stood pressed against the walls, their complexions pallid and their demeanor subdued, observing the systematic dismantling of their professional world. Chief Pike, Sergeant Beckett, and Officer Riley were no longer the pursuers. They had become the pursued. They were seated in separate interrogation chambers, divested of their badges, their utility belts, and their firearms. Isolated from one another, they were left to contemplate the terrifying silence of their own thoughts, speculating on the identity of the first to falter. Presiding over the federal investigation was Special Agent Tessa Whitaker of the FBI's Civil Rights Division. She was a professional renowned for dismantling corrupt local law enforcement agencies, possessing a demeanor as sharp and unyielding as a surgical instrument. She entered the observation room where Colonel Thorne and General Voss were standing. Zara was intently observing Officer Riley through the one-way glass. She had declined any medical attention beyond a cursory examination of her wrists and a cold application for a contusion on her cheek. Her presence here was deliberate. She stood with her arms crossed, the deep violet discolorations on her wrists stark against the soft, cream-colored wool of her sweater. Her posture was rigid, her expression a mask of terrifying composure. She was not observing an individual, she was observing a target. "We appear to have encountered an impediment, General," Agent Whitaker stated, her voice strained with frustration as she firmly closed the heavy, sound-attenuated door behind her. Zara did not turn. Her gaze remained fixed on Riley, who was currently plucking at a loose thread on his uniform trousers, his leg exhibiting a nervous tremor. "Elucidate." "The recorded dashcam footage from Riley's patrol vehicle has been irrevocably erased," Whitaker admitted, depositing a folder onto the metallic table. "According to their information technology specialist, a sudden and inexplicable technical malfunction affected the primary storage server. Furthermore, the body-worn cameras were never activated. Riley claims he neglected to activate them amidst the heightened circumstances. Thorne forcefully struck the table, causing the coffee cups to jolt. That explanation is entirely preposterous. We are fully aware that her apprehension was a deliberate targeting. They are actively concealing evidence. Naturally, Whitaker conceded with a sigh, massaging her temples. However, mere suspicion and definitive proof admissible before a federal jury are two disparate entities, Colonel. In the absence of that footage, this devolves into a he said, she said scenario. They are asserting that you exhibited erratic behavior, General, that you were traversing the center line of the roadway, that you initiated the physical confrontation with Officer Riley, and that your identification was only discovered subsequent to your incapacitation. Pike is steadfastly maintaining the narrative that this was a lawful traffic stop that escalated due to the suspect's non-compliance. Zara turned away from the observation glass. Her eyes were dark and hardened. She recalled the rain, the blinding illumination, the sensation of the cold car hood pressing against her face. She mentally replayed the incident with the tactical precision of a combat commander reviewing surveillance imagery. She remembered the apprehension, yes, but she also vividly recalled the specifics. The loose gravel, the towering pine trees, the distant dwelling. There was an individual who witnessed the event, Zara stated softly. Whitaker looked up, her pen poised above her notebook. And who might that be? We conducted a preliminary survey of the immediate vicinity. It is a rural thoroughfare. I do not possess her personal designation, Zara affirmed, her voice unwavering. Route 9, at the 42nd mile marker. There is a modest, white-colored residence situated directly opposite the location where my vehicle was stopped. It is positioned on a slight incline, perhaps 50 yards, set back from the roadway. I observed movement behind a curtain. Thorne regarded her with a questioning expression. During the progression of the apprehension, you discerned movement behind a curtain? Situational awareness is the fundamental principle for survival, Elias, Zara responded. An individual was observing from the front window. While the porch illumination was inactive, the interior lighting was active. They witnessed the entire occurrence. Whitaker promptly retrieved her radio, her eyes alight with newfound hope. Dispatch a unit to Route 9. Investigate the residence situated across from the apprehension site. I require that door to be addressed immediately. Shortly thereafter, an unpretentious sedan navigated the gravel driveway leading to the property of Mrs. Beatrice Caldwell. She was a retired school librarian who dedicated her days to the cultivation of her azaleas and her evenings to observing the adjacent roadway from the comfort of her preferred armchair. She had resided in Oak Creek for her entire existence and possessed an intimate understanding of the individuals who held influence within the community. When Agent Whitaker arrived at the doorstep, Mrs. Caldwell exhibited no outward signs of surprise. Instead, she appeared palpably relieved. She opened the door, clutching an iPad in her trembling, liver-spotted hands. I anticipated your arrival, Mrs. Caldwell whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I observed the news vehicles this morning. I witnessed the egregious actions perpetrated against that lady last evening. It was profoundly unjust. It was unequivocally wrong. She presented the iPad to Whitaker as if it were a sacred artifact. I managed to record the entire incident. I mastered the functionality of the Zoom feature during the Christmas holidays to capture my grandchildren's school performance. I have documented everything. Whitaker accepted the device and initiated playback. The video was initially unsteady, filmed through a rain-streaked window pane, but the accompanying audio, amplified by the quietude of the rural night, was undeniably conclusive. A fine automobile? Whose is it? Riley's voice sneered from the tablet, discernible despite its low volume. You are employed at the commissary, perhaps the laundry services. Then ensued the physical altercation, the forceful shove, the sickening audible impact of Riley's boot crushing the communication device into the loose gravel, and the definitive element, the irrefutable evidence, Beckett's voice, crystal clear despite the persistent rain. We will document this meticulously before... Whitaker closed her eyes and exhaled a lengthy, shuddering breath. Mrs. Caldwell, she addressed the elderly woman, You have just brought down an entire law enforcement agency." Back at the station, the atmosphere within the interrogation chamber underwent a dramatic shift the moment Whitaker re-entered. She neither occupied a seat nor offered Riley a glass of water. She simply placed the iPad on the metallic table, its screen oriented towards him, and initiated playback. Riley watched his professional career disintegrate in vivid, high definition. The color leached from his countenance, leaving him resembling a lifelike wax effigy. He absorbed the video content in a state of horrified silence. He heard his own audacious pronouncements, his own ingrained cruelty, reverberating back at him. He observed himself deliberately destroying the communication device, a clear federal transgression. He heard himself conspiring to fabricate charges against a... When the video concluded, the silence in the chamber grew more oppressive than lead. "That constitutes multiple years for deprivation of rights under color of law," Whitaker stated calmly, leaning against the wall. "Years for obstruction of justice, years for conspiracy. And given that the victim holds a high-ranking military position, we are looking at significantly enhanced sentencing parameters. You are facing the prospect of remaining incarcerated in federal prison until your final days, Dax." Riley began to tremble uncontrollably. The tremor originated in his hands and propagated to his shoulders until his teeth chattered audibly. He glanced towards the mirror, fully aware of Zara's presence behind it. I... Riley stammered. "Do not address the mirror," Whitaker commanded sharply. "Address me directly. You possess a single opportunity to mitigate your situation, and that window is rapidly closing. Who issued the directive?" Riley began to weep uncontrollably. It was not a dignified expression of sorrow. It was the unseemly, snot-filled sobs of a tormentor who had finally encountered an opponent of superior strength. "It was Beckett," Riley blubbered, striking the table with his hand. "He instructed me to do it. He stated she was merely another... He claimed we required the arrest statistics to secure the grant funding. I simply followed his instructions." "Merely another what?" Whitaker opened her notebook, her pen poised. "Relate every detail. Commence with Chief Pike." The sequence of consequences began to unfold with relentless inevitability. In his desperate attempt at self-preservation, Riley betrayed everyone. He divulged a decade-long pattern of systemic targeting of minority motorists operating high-end vehicles, illicitly seizing their assets under dubious civil forfeiture statutes to artificially inflate the department's financial reserves. They had engaged in the systematic pilfering of currency, motor vehicles, and valuable jewelry, subsequently burying all related complaints. They had effectively operated a clandestine highway robbery operation masquerading under the authority of their badges. By midday, the Federal Bureau of Investigation was systematically removing boxes of incriminating documents from Pike's office. By the afternoon, the governor of Georgia had formally announced the immediate suspension of the entire leadership of the Oak Creek Police Department. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Zara stood near the rear egress of the police station. 2 federal marshals were escorting Riley towards a waiting transport van. He was no longer the swaggering officer who had subjected her to the blinding glare of a flashlight. He was now a convicted offender, clad in an orange jumpsuit, his wrists and ankles secured with shackles. He lifted his head as he passed her. He slowed his pace, attempting to make eye contact, perhaps seeking absolution, or perhaps hoping to find a flicker of mercy in her expression. Zara maintained her unwavering gaze. She offered neither a smile nor a frown. She simply mirrored the same cold, professional indifference that he had so readily denied her the previous night. Her gaze penetrated him, extending beyond him, as if he were already an ethereal apparition, a lingering memory of a problem she had definitively resolved. Riley lowered his head in utter defeat and shuffled into the van. The door slammed shut with a resounding finality that echoed across the asphalt. Zara observed its departure, then glanced at her wristwatch. It was time to resume her official duties. Later, the atmospheric conditions in Atlanta were oppressive, a palpable weight pressing down upon the city, transforming the air into a shimmering veil of humidity and exhaust fumes. Exterior to the federal courthouse, the environment was characterized by considerable disarray. News vehicles from every prominent broadcast network lined the thoroughfares, their satellite dishes angled towards the cloudless sky like silent supplications for a reception signal. Protesters, vocal supporters, and a throng of curious onlookers jostled for advantageous positions behind the substantial metallic barricades, their collective voices generating a low, restless murmur that permeated even the formidable stone edifice of the judicial building. Within courtroom 4B, however, the ambient temperature was frigid and the atmosphere utterly still. The silence was absolute, a heavy shroud that stifled the customary rustling of clothing and hushed whispers of attendees. This was not merely a judicial proceeding concerning a routine traffic infraction on a rain-soaked evening. It had evolved into a national referendum on ethical conduct, the egregious abuse of authority, and the insidious corruption that can lie concealed behind the veneer of a badge. The legal case of the United States versus Pike, Beckett, and Riley had captivated the nation's attention, systematically peeling back the layers of a compromised small-town law enforcement agency to expose the inherent darkness lurking beneath its surface. Lieutenant General Zara Voss occupied a seat in the foremost row, a solitary beacon of tranquility amidst a palpable sea of tension. Today, she had shed the civilian disguise of cashmere attire and tailored slacks. She was attired in her official United States Army Service uniform, the distinguished dress blues. The dark fabric was impeccably pristine, tailored to perfection. Upon her shoulders, 3 silver stars gleamed brilliantly under the harsh fluorescent illumination, serving as a stark reminder of the considerable authority she wielded. Her jacket was replete with the insignia of her extensive service, bearing the Legion of Merit, the Bronze Star, and the Defense Distinguished Service Medal. Each ribbon represented a hard-fought battle, a critical crisis successfully navigated, a profound sacrifice willingly made. She maintained a posture that was less a pose and more a demonstration of profound discipline, her back erect, her hands resting serenely upon her knees. To any casual observer, she presented an image of indomitable strength. Yet internally, Zara felt the cumulative fatigue from numerous depositions, the unrelenting media scrutiny, and the repeated, humiliating reliving of that night. It had exacted a significant toll. Nevertheless, she steadfastly refused to betray any outward signs of this exhaustion. She was a general officer serving in the United States Army. Composure was not merely an expectation, it was an absolute requirement. She had delivered her testimony the preceding day. The defense attorneys, operating from positions of desperation and strategic disadvantage, had employed every conceivable tactic. They had attempted to portray her as an individual consumed by anger, an overly sensitive member of the elite who had fundamentally misinterpreted the benevolent intentions of the local law enforcement personnel. They had sought to contort her statements to imply that she had deliberately provoked the officers. Zara had systematically dismantled their arguments. She had not elevated her voice. She had refrained from any display of emotional volatility. She had employed logic as her sole weapon, citing the precise statutes that the officers had flagrantly violated with an accuracy that left the defense team stammering and utterly silent. Now, the moment of conclusion had arrived. Judge Victor Lang entered the courtroom. The bailiff's authoritative pronouncement of all rise commanded the immediate attention of the entire assembly. Judge Lang was a man of unwavering integrity, renowned for his zero tolerance for malfeasance and the severe penalties he imposed on those who violated public trust. He settled into his chair, straightened his wire-rimmed spectacles, and surveyed the 3 men facing him. The stark disparity between the individuals who had subjected Zara to terror on the roadside and those now seated at the defense table was striking. Chief Desmond Pike, the former head of Oak Creek, who had ruled it as his personal fiefdom, appeared diminished. His attire hung loosely, and his complexion was the pallid, unhealthy hue of someone who had been deprived of sunlight for an extended period. Sergeant Lyle Beckett, once a swaggering aggressor, now looked incensed and trapped, his jaw set in a rigid line of defiance. Dax Riley, on the other hand, simply seemed young. His former bravado had vanished, replaced by the wide-eyed terror of a child realizing the gravity of the situation. Judge Lang rustled the documents on his bench, the sound a sharp crack in the hushed chamber. "In my tenure as a judge," he commenced, his voice a deep, commanding rumble that resonated throughout the gallery, "I have presided over cases involving murderers, thieves, and fraudsters. However, I can recall few instances of such blatant, systemic abuse of authority as I have witnessed in this proceeding. You men were entrusted with the solemn responsibility of safeguarding public safety. You were issued a badge, a firearm, and the power of the state. Instead of employing this authority for protection, you weaponized it for intimidation, theft, and terror." He paused, allowing the weight of his pronouncements to sink in. His gaze then shifted to the youngest defendant. "Dax Riley, please stand." Riley jolted to his feet, his knees audibly knocking. He grasped the table for support. "You are young," the judge stated, his tone not unkind, but imbued with an unyielding resolve. "However, your conduct has been that of a seasoned criminal. You targeted a woman based solely on her ethnicity and the vehicle she drove. You physically assaulted a decorated officer. You destroyed crucial evidence in a futile attempt to conceal your transgressions. I sentence you to several years in federal penitentiary without the possibility of parole." A piercing wail erupted from the back of the courtroom, Riley's mother. The sound was raw and heart-wrenching. Riley closed his eyes, his head dropping to his chest as tears coursed down his face. He averted his gaze from Zara, unable to meet her eyes. "Lyle Beckett, stand." Beckett rose deliberately, his eyes fixed on the judge with hostility. "You held a supervisory role," Lang continued, his voice hardening. "You were the experienced officer. It was your obligation to guide Officer Riley. Instead, you exacerbated the situation. You instructed a junior officer in the arts of deception, in fabricating accusations, and in burying the truth under a mountain of official reports. You are a disgrace to the uniform you once wore. You are sentenced to several years." Finally, the judge's attention turned to the source of the corruption, Desmond Pike. Pike stood, a tremor in his hand as he wiped sweat from his brow. "You fostered the environment that permitted this to transpire," Lang declared, his voice laced with contempt. "You sanctioned the scheme of asset forfeiture that transformed your department into a criminal enterprise. You attempted to conceal these actions. You are the mastermind of this disgrace. I sentence you to several years." The gavel struck. Crack! The sound was definitive, akin to a gunshot, final and unalterable. As bailiffs approached with standard restraints, not the instruments of fear they had previously employed, Zara rose. She offered no cheers, no smiles. There was no elation in the moment, only the somber satisfaction of a task completed. She adjusted her cap, ensuring it was perfectly positioned, pivoted, and proceeded down the central aisle. Outside on the courthouse steps, the oppressive heat assailed her like a physical force. A throng of reporters, microphones extended, awaited her. Their questions converged into a chaotic cacophony. Camera flashes burst like lightning, blinding in the midday sun. General Voss, do you have a statement? How do you feel about the verdict?" "General, is this justice?" Zara paused at the apex of the stairs. She surveyed the assembled press, contemplating the millions who would witness this event on the evening news. She thought of the young soldiers under her command and of the countless citizens who had been accosted on desolate roads, individuals who lacked the 3-star protection she possessed. She raised a hand, and the clamor subsided. "Justice was dispensed today," Zara stated, her voice steady and clear, projecting to the furthest reaches of the crowd without amplification. "However, let us be unequivocally clear. I was fortunate. I possessed the rank, the resources, and the expertise to navigate that encounter. Most do not. These men did not merely attack me, they assailed the very principle of equal application of the law. Today the system functioned, but only because we compelled it to." She paused, her gaze locking onto the lens of the nearest camera, her stare piercing. "Do not construe this triumph as the conclusion of the conflict. There are other routes, other dark hours, and other officers who have betrayed their oaths We must all remain vigilant. Dismissed." She moved away, parting the sea of reporters as a vessel cleaves through water. A sleek black government sedan idled at the curb, its engine a soft purr. Colonel Thorne, her loyal chief of staff, held the rear door open. "Where to, General?" Thorne inquired as she settled into the cool leather interior of the back seat. Zara reclined, her shoulders finally relaxing slightly. She watched the Atlanta skyline recede as the car accelerated. Her thoughts drifted to Mrs. Caldwell, the courageous librarian who had recorded the incident and had sent her a card featuring her award-winning azaleas just the previous week. She remembered the young black private at the Pentagon who had stopped her in the corridor solely to express his gratitude. "Take me to the base, Elias," Zara instructed, retrieving a substantial logistics file from her briefcase. "I have a supply chain briefing. The world does not cease to function simply because wrongdoers are incarcerated." As the vehicle merged into the heavy interstate traffic, Zara Voss did not glance back at the courthouse. Her gaze was fixed ahead. She was a soldier, and the mission persisted. The karmic balance had been struck, the universe's equilibrium restored. For the general, however, it was simply another day. And so, the arrogance of 3 corrupt officers met the indomitable resolve of a United States general. They presumed to prey on a defenseless individual, but instead they initiated a confrontation with the entire Pentagon and lost everything. This serves as a potent reminder that while authority can be wielded unjustly, integrity and truth possess an inherent capacity to fight back, at times with the formidable power of a Black Hawk helicopter. If you enjoyed this narrative of retribution, please consider liking this video. Your engagement significantly aids the channel's growth and informs me of your interest in similar stories. Do you believe the sentencing was sufficiently severe? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. And remember to share this video with your friends and subscribe with notifications enabled to ensure you never miss a new installment. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to our next encounter.
In the end, the truth always comes out.